uh, Tara Kishnaswamy, Mr. Umapathy, and friends. I am extremely grateful that you have found your way to come over here. Many of you are familiar with this place, but some of you may not be. And it's very nice of you to have come in spite of the warnings of rain, traffic jams, and all those things. I will not take much of your time because both of them are waiting to grill me on many of the points that you have made. So I must give them that chance to do that. But I'll only mention one small thing for about 5 minutes. The title of my book or memoir is A Fall from Grace. Now, many of the people will be wondering, what is this fall and whose grace and all that? Now, I'll only mention one experience I had, and that will explain the kind of fall from grace of all the 4 or 5 pillars, whatever things that we have got in this democratic system under our constitution. I was assistant commissioner and subdivisional magistrate in a place called Lingusugur in Raichur district, which is one of the most godforsaken districts or backward places, you can say. Out of the then 19 districts, it was 18th or 17th district. Oh, sorry. Caller mic idya? Yes. Yeah, sometimes, from the music people, it's easier. The reason is, being a very short person, I can look down upon people. This is the idea. But I have to keep it very close to my mouth, as Sudhakar said, yes. You see, as I said, I was a AC assistant commissioner and subdivisional magistrate in a place called Lingusugur in Raichur district, which was the 17th most underdeveloped district out of the 19 districts then. Now we have got 30 districts. Still, it will be somewhere about 27 or 28. Now, I had, that was in 1967, you can say it is biblical time and all that. It's now how many years? Some 33 plus 55 years now. Now, you see, I had one, Bunny, please come. I had one block development officer. In those days, we had the BDOs. Please come. We had the BDOs, block development officer. They were working under the supervision of the assistant commissioner in those days, even now. Now, he was about 45 or so. I was just 26. Now, I found him all the time wearing khadi. And first day, second day, third day, whenever I saw him, he was wearing a khadi. So after a few days, I asked him, why are you wearing all the time khadi? Because most of the block government officials don't wear khadi. So he told me that he was born in 1923, and at the age of 19, when Mahatma Gandhi had issued the call for Quit India movement in 1942, he was studying he had joined the college and he was studying in the college. But he joined the Quit India movement, and he was arrested and he was tried, and then 2 years imprisonment was given to him in Belgaum jail. He was from Belgaum at that time. So he was put in the jail for 2 years, because he came out after 2 years and then joined the government service in a very small position because he could not continue his college studies. Since his days of that Quit India movement from the age of 19, he had been wearing khadi. So that was, and then he was an extremely pious person, extremely moral, ethical person. Normally, a very honest BDO cannot complete one school building, because there will be a lot of cuts in the estimate of the school building construction. So it's a very rare kind of a person who will complete works in a very honest manner. He was one. And he was so transparent and so nice that people really liked him. Now, after I was there only for 2 years, because we get our promotions in 2 years, and I came here to Bangalore as Deputy Secretary Planning and all that, which is a different story. But then he was keeping in touch with me all the time till he retired. In those days, their state government retirement age was only 55. So he retired, and then I retired only much later in 2001. But till he retired, he was keeping in touch with me. And even after his retirement also, he was heading the All India Freedom Fighters Samiti, Karnataka chapter. So he was heading that. And even after my retirement also, sometimes he used to come and meet me, but then slowly I lost touch with him. Just 3 months back, February, he was born in 1923. So in February 2023, he had completed 100 years and 1 month, and he died. Now, he being a very honest and straightforward person throughout his life, a Gandhian, he was living only on his freedom fighters pension, which is 23,000 rupees in our state now. I mean, now means at that 2002, 2003, it keeps on increasing slowly, but still 23,000, and plus his own pension as BDO, altogether about 45,000. Now, what happened was, I'll be very short because I'm already overshooting my time. Now, when he had only one son and a daughter, the son was also in some clerical job. He had only one house. He had not amassed wealth and all that. Very honest person. Now, when he died, his son, who was a clerk in some small government office, he took him, he and his brother-in-law, because he had a daughter also. His brother-in-law was working in a bank as a clerk. Both of them went to the Bangalore BBMP, and for crematorium, the charges are 250 rupees. So he paid the 250 rupees for the crematorium, and very same day, they took the body to the Rajajinagar Harish Chandra Ghat electric crematorium. And there, when they tried with the attendant, BBMP attendant there, he asked for 6,000 rupees. Now, these people said, look, we have already paid the fees of 250 rupees, and what is this you are asking for 6,000? ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಟೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ BBMP official says, no, that what you have paid is for the official fees of the BBMP, but I have to do all this hard work here. So it is 6,000 rupees you have to pay. Now these people didn't have 6,000 rupees. So they went back and then trying to collect some money, and then they went back. After some 2-3 hours they come back, but still they didn't have 6,000. They could get only 3,200 rupees. And they gave that 3,200 rupees to this crematorium official, and he didn't accept it, saying that no, this is only half of what I have been asking for, I can't do this. So this haggling went on for some more time. It was getting 5:30, and by the time he will have to close the crematorium work by about 6 o'clock or so. So then, and these people are getting angry also, because naturally, because the body was lying there for about 6 hours. So they were getting angry also. So finally, the BBMP official, for the sake of saving his own health conditions, he agreed, okay, I will agree with this, very grudgingly agreed. And then he pulled that lever, he cranked that lever and pushed the bier, which is the wooden frame in which the body is kept, into the furnace. And he became ashes within a few moments. So this, why I'm saying this is, why did, his name is Matad, was Matad. He's from Belgaum. This Matad, why did he go to jail in 1942 for 2 years, fighting for the freedom, and ultimately not even getting a dignity after the death? The problem is corruption is there right from the birth to death, and even after death in cremation also there is. Now, birth hegandre in Bangalore government hospitals nalli, when a baby is born, the ayah takes the baby and then cleans it up, giving the first bath, and then putting, keeping a towel around the body, around the child, around the baby, and then brings it for the first time to the mother. But to show the newborn baby to the mother, the ayah of the hospital, who is a permanent government servant, asks for 1,000 rupees. That is the rate in Bangalore government hospitals. If it is a baby girl, there is a concessional rate of 500 rupees. I'm not joking. You learn these economics from your house helper and all that. They will tell you, because we don't go to the general maternity ward at any time and all that. We the what I would call the 10% people, which I will explain sometime during the discussion. Yeah? But the point I'm making is, right from the birth till the cremation or burial, whatever, you have to, people have to pay bribes in these 75 years of independence. I mean, this is the kind of thing which we have seen in our official life, and as citizens also you would have come across any number of such instances. So this is the basis on which, and there are so many reasons for this, why it has been happening. It is not the fault of the politicians alone. It's not the question of political will. See, many of the intellectuals, the media and all say that there is no political will. There is no administrative will also. Even if there is no political will, if there is an administrative will, a lot can be done. Similarly, it applies to judiciary also, it applies to media, to everybody. These are the so-called 4 pillars of our system, which is what I have tried to, somewhat I have tried to explain in what Vikram calls a racy style of writing and all that. Because normally we are accustomed to write government letters and then reports and all that, which will be dry as a bone and then unreadable kind of thing, insulting language. You take notice that you have to do this thing. Any government letter will start, anything started to take notice. It's not a please do. There's no such word as please in any government letters, you won't find. And this kind of thing which has been happening a long time. So I have pointed out some of these things in a readable kind of style, or you can say journalistic style, with due respect to journalism. There are so many substantive issues also in the book, which both Mr. Umapathy and Kishnaswamy are waiting to ask me questions. So I will stop here. I have taken about 12 minutes. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I was given to understand that this program is structured in a way. How was it now, sir? Yeah. Thank you. I was given to understand that the structure of this program is predetermined. It is not much about the book actually. It's about the issues around the book. So I have tried to be, whether you call as comments or queries, whatever. I just cannot describe these queries or comments as I can't. Whoever reads this book by Balu sir can't play the role of a devil's advocate. You see, Balu sir's book is it's an outstanding. In my college days, I had started reading these books about Upamanyu Chatterjee's English August. I started from civil service officers by biographical accounts, and till now the last one I read was about A.S. Dulat's Amarjit Singh Dulat's work, actually very gripping. And Balu sir just said it is journalistic. I didn't find the language journalistic language actually. It's poetic. It's literary language actually. I was fascinated by the kind of language he has used, and though you may get misguided by the cover because it is not glossy and it is not by it is not published by a much famed publishing house actually, but the content is gold standard actually. So I'll maybe Tara will speak more about the book, but I have phrased my queries general in general in nature. Sardar Patel famously called the Indian Administrative Service as the steel frame of India's government machinery. He and many others viewed the IAS as a solid foundation upon which the rest of the bureaucracy rested. But many now think this steel frame is rusting, and inefficiency and corruption have corroded India's bureaucracy, which needs to be made more efficient and accountable to people. A successful IAS officer today is seen as a hero. Balu is one of them actually. A successful IAS officer today is seen as a hero, single-handedly fighting the odds. A very senior member of the IAS is said to have made a remark that the government recruits race horses and then turns them into mules. Arun Shourie used to say that the civil servants in independent India suffer from the ruler syndrome or the colonial mindset. Largely it is true in my opinion, even to this day. Article 311 in the Constitution that protects civil servants from arbitrary dismissal. But it needs to be amended to include incompetence as a ground for removal from service. Not many civil servants today qualify to Patel's principle of incorruptibility, which is the biggest desired virtue for a civil servant. But when it comes to running a nation, the IAS-led civil service is still the most dependable part of the system, despite increasing number of cases of civil servants functioning more as cardholders of the ruling party rather than public servants. Of late, we are seeing this phenomenon more and more expressly. The new India would demand an updated and pro-people bureaucratic system. It's also true that an IAS officer would never get rewarded for making a big positive change, but would certainly be penalized if things go wrong. There is also the perception that the system is skewed against honest, upright officers who are subject to frequent transfers and motivated allegations. Dr. D. Subbarao, former RBI governor, holds a view that IAS has failed the nation, saying that it's not all politicians' fault. Public perception, IAS is an elitist, self-serving status quo. They are out of touch with reality, they wallow in their privileges and social status, and have lost the courage of conviction to stand up for what is right. In an article in a national daily, he wrote that it was not the 70s when any talk of scams, the CM or PM would stand in the legislature to announce the appointment of an IAS officer to inquire into the charges. It used to be accepted. But today, the CM and PM would be jeered on such announcement, and an inquiry by a caged parrot is publicly unacceptable. Why? It is because IAS officer is perceived to be a part of political establishment. To quote, Justice K.S. Radhakrishnan and Justice P.C. Ghosh of Supreme Court of India, much of the deterioration in the functioning of bureaucracy is due to political interference, it is said. Interference by politicians and politicians' Babu's nexus in corruption is an ongoing concern. In October 2013, the Supreme Court of India, in the case of T.S.R. Subramanian and others versus Union of India, ordered both the Government of India and state governments to ensure fixed tenure to civil servants. The court asked senior bureaucrats to write down the oral instructions from politicians so that a record would be kept of all the decisions. This judgment was seen on the similar lines of the Supreme Court's 2006 judgment of Prakash Singh case on police reforms. The judgment was welcomed by various bureaucrats and media who hoped that it will help in giving freedom and independence to the functioning of bureaucracy. But it's an obvious fact out in the street that Indian civil service was not able to deliver service based upon the expectations of the people or the founding fathers of the Constitution. The public perception about the members of civil services is that they are burdensome, low performers, heading a highly bloated bureaucracy, which is often perceived to be corrupt and inefficient in governing the country. Constitutional protection was meant to enable IAS to operate independently, freely, objectively, and fearlessly. Unfortunately, political interference and administrative acquiescence has severely dented the professional fiber of the service. One of the key causes of bureaucratic indifference, the reluctance to take decisions and lack of professionalism, is an account of frequent transfers, whimsical postings, and political pressure applied on civil servants in the process of decision making. Again, quoting Sardar Patil, arguing for the continuation of All India services, had clearly warned that the civil service can be only as good as the political executive is. In the kind of politics that currently prevails, especially in the states, all civil service reform will be stillborn until politics attain the desire to improve governance in the national interest. But still, abandoning or abolishing the steel frame is not the solution, in my view. But yet, the new India would demand an updated and pro-people bureaucratic system. So, in your view, sir, is it a steel frame or a steel cage or a steel frame getting rusted?
You have some other questions or?
No, I need to one by one. Should I finish?
No.
I'll just try to, because there's so many things you have said there. But the main thing is about the
No, it's a generally
steel frame or rusted steel frame you had mentioned. Whether it is a steel frame or a copper frame or an aluminum frame or a bamboo frame or any frame at all is there left. These are all, highly debatable. But it started with that. The ICS is supposed to have been a steel frame, though there were problems with the ICS also. But one thing is important, what you were mentioning about Sardar Patel. In fact, I have noted down for another speech which I had to give in that our academy in Mussoorie. Now, this is what Sardar Patel had said in 1949 in the Constituent Assembly. Just about 30 seconds it will take. I'll read these 4 lines. The union will go, he was addressing the MPs in the Parliament, Constituent Assembly. The union will go and you will not have a united India if you do not have a good All India service which has the independence to speak out its mind, which has a sense of security, that you will stand by your word, and that after all there is the parliament of which you can be proud, where their rights and privileges are secure. If you do not adopt this course, then do not follow the present constitution. Substitute something else. Put in a Congress constitution or some other constitution, or put in RSS constitution. He used this word. Put in RSS constitution, whatever you like, but not this constitution. This is what Sardar Patel had said, and he was a defender of the continuance of the service, All India service, and then only the name was changed to Indian Administrative Service. But the procedure of recruitment, the UPSC incidentally was created as early as 1929 or so, and in 1935 Government of India Act it was given the formal structure, and then in 1951 our constitution when it came, it has been given as total protection. As I was mentioning some time back, it is simply impossible to dismiss a peon from the government service. So you got the security of the service, and then the pay used to be much less in the olden days. I got 450 rupees was my salary, including all allowances, when I was appointed first as Assistant Commissioner and a Subdivisional Magistrate. Today, the starting salary for a government servant is about, for an IAS officer is in a junior scale is 71,000 altogether, which is quite a big jump. This is because this Lee Kuan Yew, who was the singer who made Singapore what it is, from third world to first world book and all he wrote. He had come to India quite some time back. Then he had told the Prime Minister, it was P.V. Narasimha Rao at the time, if you give peanuts, you will get monkeys. These are the exact words he used. And then said, your civil servants are paid so badly, though they are recruited in a very, very well, in a good manner and all that, competitive manner, absolutely no corruption in that and all that. Incidentally, UPSC is the only organization in India, only agency in India, against which corruption charges have not been made at all in the recruitment. Last year, 11 lakh people wrote the what is called, applied for the exam, out of which about 7 lakh people wrote the preliminary exams, of which 13,000 people were asked to write the final papers, and from whom they called for interview about 2,500 people, of whom 933 people they have selected, if you see yesterday's or today's paper. So it's a question of 1 in 3,700 or so gets selected. So it's a complete foolproof system of recruitment. Against no other organization this can be said, that is that corruption. I'm not talking about the public service commissions in the states. That's a different story altogether. But the point is, what I'm trying to say is, yes, the security of service, then Article 311, as you pointed out, nothing can be done. The pay and allowances are good. May not be very, topmost thing like, some Infosys people getting very high salaries and all that, you won't find here. But you got the cabinet secretary's salary is 2.5 lakhs per month when he retires, plus some allowances comes to about 3 lakhs of rupees. But the point is our medical expenses, which is one of the main things, that is fully taken care of for the officer and the spouse. All these securities are there. In spite of this, there has been quite a large number of genuine complaints that the administrative services have not been able to deliver public service. So the fault lies in whom? The fault lies in the officers themselves first, because when you have got all kinds of protection and having offended so many people, I retired quite honorably. And not only that, even 10 years after retirement also, I was asked to do so much of government work and all that. Even Mr. Yediyurappa in an unguarded moment, maybe, he even appointed me as the task force chairman to recover the government lands here and all that. So the politicians also know what is to be done in public interest. But the problem comes, you see, there is a saying, Yata Raja Tata Praja. So when ultimate decision makers are the elected representatives on any, this is an important point, on any government file, even when the secretary to government or the officer disagrees or points out this is the right thing to be done and you cannot do certain things which wrongly, the ultimate decision to be taken is by the minister concerned, which is the elected representative concerned. But when obviously something is wrong in that decision, once even a wrong decision is taken, that has to be implemented according to the civil service rules. But therein comes another point, you need not necessarily do that because you can disagree that this is manifestly an illegal thing, I can't do this. Then all that can be done is he can be transferred. Nothing else can be done. But the problem is even the courts, when some public interest litigation goes against that kind of a wrong decision taken at the government level, when it goes to the High Court or the Supreme Court, the person called to explain why this wrong thing has been done is not the minister, but the secretary to government who is hauled up before the court. And what can he say? He can only defend what is written in that file, even though the minister has written. So I once asked Justice N. Kumar, he retired, of course. he was one of the few judges who would take to task government in no uncertain terms. So I asked him in one of our meetings of Indian Institute of Public Administration that why the courts are not calling to explain the minister's concern instead of that, why you are asking the officer concerned, when you can see clearly from the file that the decision taken is by the minister contrary to the advice given by the civil servant. He really had no good answer for this. He said, no, if we find such a case, we will certainly call the minister and all that, which is all not true. So the point I am making is, when the ultimate decision makers are the elected representatives, I won't use the word politician, elected representative, then you see, unless they have got certain commitment to public service and public good, and then contrary decisions are taken. So unless the officer concerned is prepared to leave that job and to go to some other job, then you see he becomes part and parcel of that system. But that is a good officer's thing. In a scale of 1 to 10, you will find 1 is, say, incorrigibly honest, 10 is incorrigibly dishonest. You will find most of the, say about 20% will be on the left side of the scale, 30% will be on the right side of the scale. In between, you will find the people who are the fence sitters, or rather they see what is going to happen to people who have done things according to rules. Now, when they also find that such officers, honest and straightforward officers, are penalized by different methods. Penalized also, you see, this is another point I would like to make. The steel frame got rusted because of its own lack of courage. Because as I said, nothing will happen to the officers' monthly incomes, annual income. Nothing will happen to his job. Even after retirement, everything office is protected. In spite of that, if an officer, and even if you are transferred to another job, yes, it's the same kind of facilities, the same salary, everything you get. In spite of that, if officers have no backbone, it is their own fault. Having said all that, the rusted steel frame, they are all true. We have to learn from Pakistan. We think that we are unique and there is nothing to be learned from our neighboring states. Like, see, the same civil service rules were there for all these countries that till 1947. Today's Pakistan, today's Bangladesh, today's Myanmar, today's Sri Lanka, all had the same civil service system. Now, what has happened in Pakistan today, as you can see, that civil service has been completely emasculated, and it doesn't really exist. It does exist. It's called superior civil service now, Pakistan superior civil service. But then there are about 8,500 people apply for the exam annually. They got a public service commission. About 400 people are selected for all Pakistan services and all that. But they're democrats, because the bureaucracy has been totally emasculated, the political powers which have come also gets weak, and therefore you get this military power which has come. It is in Pakistan, it is not the people who decide who the government is, who are the elected people. It is the military. 30 years they had military rule directly, and the rest of the period they are having indirect rule. Now, what is precisely now going on in Pakistan, you can see this is because of the total absence of civil service and bureaucracy, I would say, bureaucracy. Now, that has happened in Myanmar also. You don't have any bureaucracy there. They are all appointed by the military people. What I am trying to say is the same thing will come here also if the conditions go on like this, where you belittle a bureaucrat who is trying to do some good work and all that. But in spite of all saying all these things, there is still, where there is no interference, the bureaucracy functions well in India. Example, elections which have just now taken place. Now you see there were something like 5.7 crore or so voters were there for in Karnataka now. I mean, just the election which was over. I have some data on this. I'll just read out one or two things. And you had something like 58,000 polling booths. 58,000 polling in that. For each polling booth, you require 4 officials, unless it's a difficult polling village and all that. And these 4 into 58,000 is about 2.5 lakhs of people, excluding the police personnel. These were the people who conducted the elections, and there were, barring 1 or 2 small instances somewhere in Shimoga, in some place, the entire elections went through efficiently. They counted, the whole votes were counted by on 13th, by about 3 o'clock or so, everything was counted. People knew what is the result and all that. In no other country, including the United States, in the United States they could not count. In Florida, if you remember, in Bush's time, they could not count the votes correctly in spite of all their facilities available and all that. And these people did, in 3-4 hours time, they could count all these people. Then there was not a single complaint. That is because of the assurance given by the Election Commission. Election Commission again is a constitutional body, you cannot remove them. But what you see, the Election Commission itself, election commissioners themselves were not knowing their powers till T.N. Session came into the position, and he really put terror in the minds of all the political parties, including the ruling party and everyone, so that many of them that were terrorized and then said, this is not session, say this is Alsatian in disguised form, and that kind of thing they were telling. So the point I make is there is a total independence in the case of conducting election to the bureaucracy, and it went off well. There is not a single, you see, this is about Karnataka. There is, in 2019, you had the All India elections, parliament elections. There again, there were no polling booth destruction, even in Bihar and UP and all that, which are known for so many of these cottage industry pistols and all that kind of thing. Everything went off well, and people came to power. People were changed power here also. If bureaucracy is working under the politicians, how did you get another government here in the elections? Because, people were free to elect and nothing was interfered with, because politicians cannot interfere with the election process because the system has been built up. So system is important. Now, in spite of all this, as you said, if the steel frame has rusted and it has become some bamboo frame or no frame, that is happening now, but still you have got a few people left. But if the system is followed by constitution itself, and then that assurance is given. See, the biggest weapon that the politicians have, the elected representatives have, is transfer. Now, transfer is really speaking not a punishment. There are so many examples which I mentioned in my book, I will not mention here. Transfer is not a punishment at all. We had an example of one Chaturvedi Badrinath in Tamil Nadu. He was UP gentleman, Tamil Nadu cadre. He was an independent-minded, academic-minded person, very straightforward and all that. He was getting punished by so many people, including bureaucrats, senior bureaucrats themselves. And as a punishment, he was posted as director of archives. This is they think this is a punishment posting. But he did it so well that the archives of Tamil Nadu, they have a 1640 Bible in Tamil Nadu archives. He restored all those things, and it's a model thing. You see, if you go abroad, any of the Western countries or even Japan and all that, the archives are one of the most important things. They are sacred places, in fact. But if you go to our archives, you'll find a lot of dust, and you can't sit there. You'll get asthma, even if you are otherwise a healthy person. The point I'm making is where there is no interference, where you entirely give the freedom to bureaucrats to function in India even today. Take this example of Mahakumbha Mela. Every 13 years, Mahakumbha Mela takes place. The last one was in 2013. So in 2026, it will come. This, what is that? Allahabad is now Prayagraj. That in 2016 it will come. In the last Kumbh Mela 2013, there were, the number of people, 14 lakh per day for 50 days. The average attendance was 14 lakh per day. And it was 800 special trains were transporting these people. And they had to construct 1,22,000 temporary toilets. They had to have 550 kilometers of water pipeline. And not a single person died in this Kumbh Mela because of this stampede and all that. It is such an organized thing. And who organized it? It is not the politicians who have organized it. It is the divisional commissioner of Prayag. He is the chairman of, they got an authority, Kumbh Mela authority. It is under his leadership, under his chairmanship. There is a IGP for that as vice president. The district magistrate of Prayag, that is the deputy commissioner and district magistrate is the vice president, and under them there are about 1,000 people working. And with clockwork precision, it goes off and every 6 years there is a Ardha Kumbh Mela also. And in none of these things, any bad things, any calamity kind of thing occurs. You take any these natural calamities, and we have a large number of relief measures will have to be done. That also goes on. Well, the last one was in Kerala. 2-3 years back, there was a very big flood. Of course, army had to be, navy had to be called in, army had to be called in. All those coordination again takes place with the same district magistrate where, of course, Kerala has got a special case. Their civil society is so strong, civil organizations. They also cooperated entirely with the district administration. And people, refugees. Refugee problem is one of the biggest thing. That in 1971-72, when the Bangladesh war took place, something like 9 million people from Bangladesh came to India. 90% of them were Muslims, not Hindus. 90% were Muslims. They came away from Bangladesh to neighboring states, mainly to West Bengal. And all of those things were to be arranged by the same district administration. Of course, with the help of the state government and the central government and all that. The point I'm making is where there is no interference, where there is freedom to do things according to law, according to rules and according to common sense, there you see the Indian bureaucracy functions very well. Even today it functions. That is why Galbraith had called it a functioning anarchy. This is the term that he used. It is still functioning. Though it is an anarchy condition, it is still functioning. So the bottom line is, yes, there should be a lot of commitment in the officers themselves, especially when they got protection from all sides. And if the politicians realize that, look, this bureaucracy is necessary in our own interest. Learn from Pakistan. Since the politicians became, they emasculated the bureaucracy, they are in great trouble. It is said that Pakistan suffers from 3 A's. I'll mention this. Allah, America, Army. These are the 3 A's from which Pakistan is suffering from.
Excuse me, sir. I think you should allow the other panelists also.
Sorry, yeah.
Because we don't have enough time, and yes, he's
I'm
very
sorry,
punctual.
Vikar, I
we
quite
won't
agree.
have any time
Yeah.
for questions.
Yeah.
We could keep your responses brief.
This will be over when?
8 o'clock.
8.
So
I'll
we
finish.
need at least
finished.
15 or 20 minutes for questions as
Yes,
well.
Vikar, I agree. I finished, yeah.
Yeah.
So the point is, if there is no interference, then the bureaucracy will function. If there is no interference, the bureaucracy will not function. It will become another Pakistan type. Sorry, I took a long time.
Okay, I'm going to make it very difficult for you, sir. I think you were avoiding the difficult questions, and by speaking, now I'm going to ask you some questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yes. So, we haven't talked about the book. I'll just say a couple of things, and I'll keep it fast. These questions are going to be, short and quick answer questions, okay? So, they're going to come very fast. Lightning speed answers. First of all, how many of you have read the book? Okay. I highly recommend those of you that haven't read it to please get a copy and read it. It's hilarious. Agreed? It's just hilarious. There are parts where, the word laugh out loud would apply to this, right? It's while a lot of what he's saying is very serious and the book is serious, it is so peppered with stories. It's very easy to read. There is a lot of self-deprecating humor. There's a lot of humor. And you can see his sort of guts. In fact, at some points, it made me wonder, is he not scared for his life? Because he has done some things that are, fairly risky, right? So, like go against very powerful landlords and sort of banish them and send them in exile, right? And I've wondered, what if, and they are highly politically connected to sitting ministers. And I've wondered, is he not worried about, retribution? And there are a lot of quotes, and he gets philosophical. There's a lot of introspection that he does through the book as well. And it's very different than the tone in which you hear him speak. The tone of the book and the nature of the telling is very different than the speaking, although the content is very similar to what he spoke. It's very easy to read, right? That's why it's not in journalistic. Very easy to read. You don't want to put it down. It's unputdownable in that sense. Yeah. What I'm going to do before I put you the hard questions is to read just two sentences from the book. He quotes an interview that was done by India Today of the then Chief Minister, the elder Mr. Gundu Rao. Okay, and here is the first question that the reporter asked the Chief Minister. How would you assess your first 8 months in Karnataka? This is the question. Now the CM replies, there was no discipline in administration, and at every stage there is interference. Why do people have to come to the secretariat every day? Because they know that unless they go and meet the clerk, the file will not move. Why should they meet their MLA? Unless the local MLA speaks, the work will not be done. To meet the minister, they have to go through somebody. So I'm going to wipe this out. So far, I have succeeded 70%, and with this month, I will succeed in the remaining 50%. Okay, this is much more indicative of the tone of the book than what you just heard from him. All right, and then comes his commentary. Okay, the author's commentary, and again, I will read just a few lines. Quote, file clearance was a fetish with Gundu Rao. He had the strong notion that all maladministration in government is due to files being kept pending for long periods. So every 3 months, he started a campaign that all files pending for more than 1 year in the department must be disposed of. Okay, if the file is pending for more than 1 year, you need to dispose of it. When he found that the corridors of the Vidhan Saudha was now thronged by file-chasing brokers because of this policy, right? File-chasing brokers, he ordered the closure of all gates to Vidhan Saudha and the multi-story building, extended secretariat, between 10:30 and 5 p.m. during the file disposal week. So even MLAs could not enter the building without the permission of Gundu Rao because all the gates are closed. So the unbeatable bureaucracy, okay, this is in capitals. The unbeatable bureaucracy closed all files which are more than 1 year old and promptly reopened new files on the same subject so that they would get 1 year's time. All right. So, I chose to read this so that you get a sense of the book. And it is not only, and I say it's self-deprecating humor, not only because it's self-deprecating on his part, but because he chronicles the fall from grace not only of the political class, but also of the bureaucracy, also of the law and order maintenance system. And in fact, he speaks quite highly of the media for the most part. So I highly encourage you to read it. Okay, sir, we're going to questions. You have to answer them very quickly. All right. In fact, if I should say a one-line summary of it, I would say, and this is his quote about himself. He says, it's better to be headless than heartless. And this coming from an intellectual tells you almost everything you need to know about the man. All right. So first question is, very early in your career, you actually, even as you're preparing for the IAS, you start in a private company in then Madras. And you have two experiences of corruption. One is there is a bribe for some account certification, and then there is a stenographer, who's made a director. And you see just two instances for corruption in the very short stint you have in the private company. But that makes you conclude that you no longer want to work in the private sector and you'd rather work in government. Now, is that because at that time you were young and naive and thought that the public sector was corruption-free? Or was that your Marxian influence as a student of economics?
Actually, it is not because of the disillusionment with the private sector that I came out to the government. I had decided even in my college days, I had met one of the first secretaries to the Indian Embassy, a very senior 1955 batch IFS person. I used to know him. So he had told me that if you have got a good academic record, you should get into the IAS. He didn't say IFS. He was an IFS man. He said, you get into the IAS where you can do a lot of good public service. So he was my ideal kind of person.
So that motivated you to get in.
I had decided that I'll get into the government service and into the IAS. Where he had given me his book itself, the economic textbook, Kenneth Boulding's book. The point is, this private enterprise thing was only for me parking space. Short-term parking space.
Sure.
I worked there for about 2.5 years or 3 years.
Right.
Because I had to prepare for the exam. So when I first went to join I'm a commerce graduate instead. I have nothing to do with poetry or philosophy and all that. So I have gone to the chartered accountant to Fraser and Ross, which was a very big firm in those days. But they told me it will take you 6 years of articleship and you won't get any salary. You have to look after yourself, no stipend in those days because it's a very big firm. So 6 years it will take. So I said, I will try my other luck, prepare the exam itself, and by working for this, it was, this is where the caste comes, which nobody has asked me yet. The company was Natukote Chettiar company, my own community people. I had gone to meet him in his house in Chennai. So he gave me immediately the job, and that's how I joined. But then I found that it is really, it's a soul-killing job. Any kind of a private enterprise you will find within 2-3 years, if you are an idealist and all that, you will not be able to be happy there. Even today, I would say this, for many of the people, even in IT sector, this happens. Anyway, so it is not because of the disillusionment of the private enterprise that I came to the government service. I decided even
Understood.
earlier. Yeah.
So the second question, of all your accomplishments, and despite being gutsy and rebellious, and it's called Memoirs of a Rebel IAS Officer, you've accomplished a lot of things especially for poor people, for pro-poor accomplishments, pro-oppressed community accomplishments, and for Dalits, for tribals. But the things that you seem most proud of that comes out through the book, through your words, are the accomplishments you've made for landless laborers who are Dalits, bonded laborers, for tribal women, right? That is where your pride really comes through. So is this a strong, and your admiration for ex-Chief Minister Devaraj Urs also comes through. Do you have a strong sort of innate connection to social justice, and did that come from your student days of social justice movement influence, Perriaristic influence, or where does that come from?
See, in my case, it's a little funny, but I will mention this. I was the only son of my parents, so my mother wouldn't allow me to go and play outside. So right from the age of 8 or 9, I became a bookworm. So the entire thing, book-based kind of mental development. And it's only a matter of time that when you get into the university, you read the leftist literature. And it's more appealing at that age, when you are in your formative years, when you get chance to read and I had good lecturers. My rector was a welfare economist, an authority on welfare economics from London School of Economics and all that. So therefore, you get into a strong philosophy, you get a strong commitment to get. Once you have got that, in fact, my economic professor used to tell, I mentioned his name, and he taught in Columbia University. He died just last year in Columbia University. What he told me was this: you see, Marxism is a virus. It's very difficult to get cured by this. There is also a Swedish saying which I quoted there: if you are in your 20s, if you are not a Marxist, you have no heart. If you are still a Marxist in your 40s, you have no head.
That's where he says it's better to be headless than heartless.
Yeah.
So do you want to take the next question, and then I can ask the next one?
A bit of trivia before I move on to my next question. He was just saying, Balu sir would have been made a very good economist, I think. He could have been a teaching faculty in London School of Economics had he pursued his, had he not strayed over to civil services. And that is one thing. And another thing is that many of you would be aware of Mr. U.R. Ananthamurthy was a very accomplished writer of Kannada, who wrote in Kannada. And he wrote a novelette called Bara. Bara is drought. Actually, it is based on the story of Mr. Balasubramanian. Devaraj Urs sends U.R. Ananthamurthy to study the drought conditions prevailing in Gulbarga district, to see it for himself and come to his own conclusion. And Mr. Ananthamurthy goes there and stays there, and Mr. Balasubramanian was a district collector or deputy commissioner, whatever you call. He was there, and the role Anantnag dons is very much Mr. Balasubramanian himself. That is one thing, and it is directed by a director which I really admire, is by Mr. M.S. Satyu. M.S. Satyu is Garam Hawa director, and that's what I wanted to share. And I won't disappoint you, sir. I'll ask you about caste question. You just now said so far nobody has asked that caste question. I'll be brief. Across Indian society, caste is actively weaponized to discriminate and exclude historically marginalized communities through communities. B.R. Ambedkar feared the heart of government would remain in the hands of Brahmins and other caste elites after independence. Ambedkar feared that without structural change, caste-based discrimination would pervade the central bureaucracy and worsen after British colonial officers departed. Ambedkar predicted that a bureaucracy controlled by caste elites would wreak havoc on legal and policy efforts to end caste system, caste-based discrimination, and untouchability. He worried that the administration, unbridled in venom and in harshness, uncontrolled by the legislature and the executive, may pursue its policy of iniquity towards the untouchables without any curb. Affirmative action has facilitated some compositional change, although the aggregate percentage of for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes exceeds the reservation quotas, the data is misleading because it overlooks their overwhelming concentration in the lowest tiers of the central bureaucracy. Correspondingly, formerly marginalized communities experienced limited success in the central bureaucracy's higher tiers where caste elites dominate. Only one of the 89 secretaries posted at the center belongs to the scheduled castes, while 3 belong to the scheduled tribes. Latest government data tabled in Parliament. This is according to the latest data tabled in Parliament in the year of 2019. And in this data, OBCs had 0 representation. Whereas 3.5% of the population has a representation which exceeds 38% overwhelmingly, and it's much more than this also sometimes. Your comments.
See, caste is a very complicated, highly complicated question, and its representation in the All India services doesn't really reflect the real situation. The reason is, you see, the persons who are belonging to scheduled caste, and even in the case of scheduled tribe as well as OBCs, the age concession is given. Up to 5 years of age concession is given. Normally, the general candidates will have to write the exam in my time before the age of 24. Between 22 and 24, you have to get through the exam. I mean, you have to get selected. But now you see that the age itself is slightly increased to the general candidates, but 5 years or 6 years is the age concession given to the weaker sections, say SC, STs and others. Now what happens is, when they get selected in the same age, same time, same year, by the time and the retiring age is same for all, 60 years. The SC/ST candidates at the age of 59 or 58, when other people become secretaries, other candidates can become, other caste people, higher caste people can become, because they are general candidates. The SC/ST will be already retiring, so they cannot become. There is an inbuilt, the concession which was given as a favor, as a positive thing, works against this community also. This is the inner technical point, which is not realized much. But the caste itself, this whole system of caste is a very much complicated system, which is why Ambedkar, whom you quoted, Ambedkar didn't say abolition of caste, he said annihilation of caste. It has to be destroyed, not controlled and not adjusted here and there. And though he wanted reservation and all that for a temporary period, not forever. But it's not happening because, you see, our social system, our political system, elections itself has entrenched this. I want to quote only one writer. There are other disciplines like genetics. There's one David Reich, R-E-I-C-H, David Reich. He is a professor of genetics in Harvard. Yes, 10 years back, in 2018, he wrote a book. The title of that book is Who We Are, Where We Came From. That's the title of the book, Who We Are, Where We Came From. It's not about India alone, but there's a lot of pages about India, there's a big genetics program going on as to the background or genetic background of people, the mixture of races and all that. But there he mentions this about India, which is very important. What he says is, it is said that India is a country of large population. He says that is not quite true. India is a country of large number of small populations. He mentioned about endogamy. That is, no backward caste, scheduled caste, they themselves will not intermarry. Even there is a left group and there is a right group. So the caste has become, in 1931, that Hutton, John Henry Hutton, he had this 1931 census in which he counted all these caste enumeration perfectly took place at that time. He counted 4,417 castes were there in India in 1931 census. After that, there has not been a caste census in the way he had 1931 census was done. When Mandal Commission had come, they took the figure from this 1931 census. That is where you get the 52% of OBC. It came first in 1931 census. So this backward caste and Leslie Miller was Karnataka. See, Mysore was an advanced state. Maharaja's government only. They, for the first time, the Mysore government wanted a reservation for DCs. They were called depressed classes in those days. SC, ST, and OBC. They were all called depressed classes. DC. And there was a reservation up to 30% for them, out of the total number of jobs. But the point is, and this again, since you raised that caste thing, Sir M. Visvesvaraya, who was such an enlightened divan and enlightened person, and responsible for so much of economic development of Mysore state at that time, he resigned his job as the Diwan, objected, saying that no, this once you make this reservation in this manner of 30% and all that, the merit will go away, and then merit will be the casualty, and therefore he resigned, and Maharaja allowed him to resign. So all these complications are there. Caste is a very strong thing. You cannot really meddle with it so easily, and it has now come to be entrenched. The OBCs themselves are not united. If you see the UP election, there is a division among the OBCs themselves. Now slowly that economic class is coming. See, this Anand Teltumbe tries to combine class and caste. There is higher castes are the higher income people, lower castes are the low income people. That's not always quite true. But in the UP last assembly elections, this was experimented successfully. That is dividing the OBC vote, because Akhilesh Prasad, the SP, that is Samajwadi Party, thought that they will get this election through, they will get the power, because 52% of the population is the majority of the population, and if they vote for this SP, they will come to power. But that didn't happen. It did not happen because the OBCs themselves were divided. They are not one. So this reservation and the caste system as it is today is going to ruin India into a terrible fragmentation, and it is going on increasing. It's not decreasing. The real answer is really economic development. If that takes place, which is not taking place yet, because you see only 10% of our population has got this so-called middle class, which will take time, and Vikar Ahmed is always warning me, so I must stop here.
So we have 20 minutes. I think you should open it up for questions. I'm sure there must be some.
Finished, yeah. So caste is not a very small thing to handle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Tara, this is Abhishek here. So in the description here, it says Karnataka's governance during his tenure and the role of leaders like Devaraj Urs, Ramakrishna Hegde, J.H. Patil and Deve Gowda. Do you have any specific questions of that time that you could ask, sir?
Yeah, actually, one of the things I wanted to ask was, while the book is titled Fall from Grace, and it documents it in a very sort of funny, incisive, caustic manner, documents the fall of the chief ministers, of the political class, ministers, MLAs, and then, of course, bureaucracy as well in parallel. And there's also a fair sort of distrust that comes to me that you seem to be documenting on the police and the course that law and order takes. It's like you can't wait for the courts to sort of render justice. There are things that you needed to do as district magistrate to somehow speed that process. So do you feel at the end of it that, Indian democracy is all sort of, there's a tone of regret and disappointment in places, right? Because you're expecting, for example, when a very, very honest IAS officer, I think Mr. Vasudev or Venugopal, I don't remember, one of them, is accused and dragged into court. Vasudev. Our Vasudev, huh?
The real case is that of H.C. Gupta, Harishchandra Gupta.
Yeah. No, the point is that your own IAS officers don't stand by even an honest officer when he's unjustly punished. The point is, despite that, the tone of regret, do you feel India's democracy is heading towards doom and gloom, or where do you see the hope? Or are you pessimistic about this?
Now, this is a very loaded question, but I will still answer to this because the crux. This is a crux. You see, you require one entire seminar for this. Anyway, I will mention one thing. You see, our Indian condition, to be very frank, 1707 Aurangzeb died. 1757 the Battle of Palashi took place. In these 50 years, the entire Mughal empire crumbled. So it is possible for a country to completely crumble if there is no central power which is.
It's possible, but what do you foretell?
Yeah, what I have been thinking is this fragmentation. Yes, it is taking place now. You see, in our own Karnataka Deccan history, if you read, the Manupillai's book, if you read Deccan history, Rebel Sultans, and it's a sequel now, there's one Konishetty, he has also written about the Deccan area. We had Palegars. This Palegar system, I don't know whether you know, many people do not know about this Palegar system. Palegar system, some 50 villages, 60 villages, one taluk, two taluks, three taluks, one leader will be there, like warlords of China in the olden days. It is they who controlled, they control the law and order situation in their own area, they collect the taxes. Similar thing is coming through now. The MLAs give instructions to the police sub-inspector. The FIR will not be written unless and until the MLA agrees to it. This is the kind of situation it has. The CRPC doesn't mention about MLAs at all. We are supposed to do according to law. But that is why the judicial system, which has not been raised, and there is no time probably for that, unless we go to the continental system, which they have got in Code Napoleon, that's how it was done, where the investigation of any crime, of any illegality is done by the police under the supervision of the magistrate. This will not, even and the magistrate's selection itself is by a process of this UPSC kind of a selection in France and in continental countries. So that they are a class upper, they are built as a class who will do things correctly. So this is this will happen. This fragmentation is already happening.
There's a
You mentioned no complaint in Karnataka election, but there is one complaint in Jayanagar constituency where Soumya Reddy's election she was robbed of her election, illegally robbed of her election through Gundaism on the part of the BJP. I'll come to my question. Sir, you are very scathing on Bangarappa, but might you agree that Balasubramanian Bommai is probably the worst chief minister we've had?
No, I won't say that because, first of all, I have not worked under this gentleman, that is our Balasubramanian Bommai, but I have seen his father, that is S.R. Bommai. He was a very honest person and he was a good person. But the point is not about that. You said about complaints. You see, what happened in this Jayanagar constituency, she will be able to know better because she had worked her heart out for that constituency. But the peculiar thing nobody is pointing out about that's Jayanagar election only. You see, the candidate who narrowly lost by 16 votes, which is Soumya R. Reddy, Ramalinga Reddy's daughter, she lost by 16 votes. Now, there was another candidate by name Soumya A. Reddy. She is from Indalaga village in Anekal. That is a reserve constituency, Anekal. So nobody knew about this Soumya A. Reddy. And she didn't campaign for the election. She didn't come to the election, the counting station at a counting center. And nobody knew about her. But in the EVM, you got the earlier name, first Soumya A. Reddy undide. Kadagada you get Soumya R. Reddy. So in the EVM, many people, even educated people, see that Soumya A. Reddy, they don't see initial Soumya Reddy and they press it. She got 320 votes. The 320 votes would have made the difference. So that complaint is not against the election officer. It's the political. You see, it's very intelligent. Whoever put her as a dummy candidate did an extremely clever thing. And this is how the democracy is misused in India. This doesn't happen under the continental system. There you see that Turkey, where they got the runoff system. This gentleman, Erdogan, got 49.5% of the votes. His immediate competitor, rival, he got 45.5%. But Erdogan could not become. Again, they are going to have runoff because the French system, the continental system, is 50% plus 1. So they have a runoff system. Only then he will be elected. Now we don't have that kind of here. The first past the post. As she has found out, 16 vote difference. You lose the election. That 16 vote is a bogus vote. 320 is not the right vote. I mean, it's given to the real Soumya R. Reddy and not Soumya A. Reddy of Indalgi village in Anekal Taluk.
Sir, so there was a question here, but to be fair, there's a case being filed against the EC because postal ballots without a gazetted officer's seal and sign that were rejected were later opened and counted as legitimate votes even though they had no sign and no seal. And also ballots with multiple markings, paper ballots with multiple markings these are not supposed to be counted, have been counted. And that is how the verdict reversed, having been given a win verdict. But that's a talk for another day.
That is going to be decided after 5 years.
We'll perhaps another seminar on that, but there's a question.
Yeah. Hi, I've seen Mr. Balasubramanian work. I was in Gulbarga when he was DC, and I've seen him working relentlessly. Of course, it was Barakala. But the question I have for you, Balu, is did you have any time to make friends? And could you make friends? Because friends ask for favors.
I do have, surprisingly, I do have friends. In fact, one of my, another colleague officer had told me that half the people will die for you, the other half the people will kill you. This is the kind of reputation I have got. So I do have friends, I do have enemies. I enjoy both of them. You can't have without enemies. Enemies are important. If you have no enemies, you have not done any work.
Before...
A favor, no. You see, real friends do not come for you for a favor once you know what kind of a person you are. You keep the friendships at a personal level, not for the official level. You don't do that.
Before we go to the next question, I want to make a comment that the book is not all about just the deterioration of, all of the above, political, bureaucratic, and judiciary. There's a lot of positive things that are said about many of the political class, including CM Veerendra Patil as a progressive, humble, upright, many cases where he erred right, correctly, towards the people on the Naxalite issue, pro-label stance that he took. CM Devaraj Urs, who tried to break the Lingayat Vokkaliga monopoly, and administrative capabilities. So there's Ramakrishna Hegde, this decentralization. There is a lot of positive things that are also said. It is not all negative. I just wanted to leave it there. There's many more questions.
Yeah, sir, this is Deepak Srinivasa, IAPA. Sir, my question is, independent India has seen presidential activism, it has seen judicial activism, it has seen executive activism. Is there a scope for civil service activism, sir, in your experience practically?
Most of these things are definition-oriented. Activism. You can't, a civil servant cannot, in service, while you are in service, you can't even speak against the government to the press. So that you will immediately be suspended, as it happened to Shankar Narayanan, who was our chief secretary. So you see, in government, as you are Ananthamurthy told me, you cannot be a rebel while you are working within the government in the real sense. All that you can do is, you can still do things within the rules if you have got the courage. If you have got the courage, yes, you can only transfer, you transfer. I am ready to try. In fact, how we were trained was our academy director, Mr. M.G. Pimputkar. The first thing he told us was, you should be prepared. In those days, we had this hold all, going in trains. Hold all. You should keep your hold all ready. And you're telling your wife that you should be ready to go anywhere in India, anywhere if you are transferred. So if you are able to do this, if you are ready with your hold all, one extra, always ready to move, then you can be impartial and you can do things without, whether you call it activism or an activist and all that. You see, the laws are always good laws. There are no doubt provisos and all that, but the laws are basically for public good. And you can do that, because the laws have not changed from British times. The British didn't rule India with the existing now, the Unlawful Activities, the Prevention Act and all those things. They had only IPC, CRPC and Evidence Act and Civil Code, Civil
But there was
Procedure Code.
MISA, which
MISA is by Indira Gandhi, not.
that's what, but it was there, I'm saying.
No, that was government of India. That rule came up with the war. With the 1939 war, they said Government of India, there is a name for it, rules. From there, this has been copied. But MISA is not all that bad. Even MISA you can use for a better purpose. The MISA was misused in India for political purpose. As you can see in that book, you can use it against landlords. There are people who have done it also elsewhere. But the point is, laws are always for a good purpose. But the thing is, you must have the guts to do it.
So, question.
Yes.
I'll just take 2 minutes. As a former civil servant, I went through your book, Balu. It's really outstanding in the sense, totally out of the ordinary. People write a lot of autobiography, particularly civil servants have been writing, but you're for the sincerity, for the purpose for which it is written to establish a point, it's outstanding. But I think the title itself is not particularly correct, because after going through your book and reading it very carefully, I think the civil service goes up in estimation rather than coming down, in the grades coming down, unlike in the case of politicians you have described. So, the one thing which the reviewer in Hindu, Ramakrishna, wrote also is the same question, that you have been rather little kind on the corrupt civil servants rather than on the corrupt politicians, because you haven't really, one case you have brought out, one person who became minister, chief secretary and things like that, who was totally corrupt, known for corruption. A few cases you have mentioned here and there of the civil servants being corrupt, but the whole book, if you read out, what stands out is the corruption of chief ministers or sort of politicians with whom you worked. So there has been sort of a differential treatment in that. That is one issue which I noticed. Second thing is that 2 or 3 cases were, of course, you have in detail explained many of the projects which you have successfully undertaken, like the drought relief scheme about which it mention was made, about in the planning department, when you pursued the nationalization to funnel the finances from the banks to the needing sectors, or even the case which you have mentioned about Banarkata land, encroachment or sort of usurpation. The question arises, after you left it, so what happened? I mean, you give out a good story, but what is the outcome of your efforts, or what happened? That's not clearly coming up. And the other thing is, of course, the sort of which the question arises with all this. Yes, you have done, the bureaucracy, for instance, with the instances of G.V.K. Rao, Satish Chandran, and a few others you have mentioned. Even the latest case of Ashok Khemka and others, it really brings out that everything is not lost for the civil service. It really sort of, and you also mentioned 2 or 3, like conducting the election, Mela and all that sort of thing. But then the question is, which leaves is there is a need for reform all the time. But will a situation like, giving a dedicated service like All India Services and expecting them to carry out with partial success so far or sort of disappointed in several cases, will a system like in UK or New Zealand, where the senior positions are left for competition, not only for the civil servants also who will go for that, and they undertake an agreement, a contract with the minister or what they will perform, what they are going to do during this period. That sort of a system, will it work better? These are the few questions which I have to raise.
You're answering
Otherwise, it will go on. It takes a lot of time.
So, yes. So we have 2 minutes, sir. This is the last question. I think BIC is very punctual about their starting and ending time. So this will be the last question, and then you can ask.
Sir, this will be, with your permission. Sir, thank you for bringing out a book as an honest IAS officer. My name is Vaidyanathan. I am an IIM MBA and an entrepreneur. But there is an observation I want to make about the good deeds of honest IAS officers. In my life, this is the third time I am an entrepreneur. In my life, I have not had to pay 1 rupee bribe because of few IAS officers who form the honest backbone. So I'm talking more as a citizen. You need to continue the crusade. I think, glad you came out and wrote, TSR wrote and several others. There is a need for the bureaucracy. During office, you are not able to do. But post office, there is a need for a massive voice to reinforce the steel frame. That's the only observation I had, because it is possible to be honest in India. Thank you.
Mr. Vikar Raman, he's here. Can I take a little time to answer him?
Yes, sir. But this is the last question.
Yeah. 3 points you had raised. One is this discriminatory treatment between political corruption and bureaucratic corruption. I have mentioned quite a lot about bureaucratic corruption also. In fact, I have mentioned there are symbiotic relations. This is a word I have used. And it is true. You see, corruption cannot be done by politicians alone unless the bureaucracy cooperates it and induces even and trains even in the earlier stages. So that is very much mentioned there. I have not really discriminated, though Ramakrishna had said that. But both are there, and I have given quite a few examples also. Like Mr. Bangarappa getting along very well with his corrupt chief secretary, and subsequently, though I have not mentioned, yes, I have mentioned it all, S.M. Krishna, though he can go on a defamation case against me, which will increase the book sales incidentally, which is not a bad thing. But he also did the same thing. He had a very Teflon exterior. I mean, very soft and very polished and all that. Anyway, the discriminatory thing is really not there if you read the whole thing. As to the continuity of civil service, that is a malady of civil service because there is no continuity. It depends upon, you see, we can't be there forever on any post. 2 years, 3 years, 3 years you are in a post even much earlier. There are people, Kemka and all that, every 6 months they are transferred and all that. And the successor who comes, unless he follows in the same vein, as he was mentioning, there's continuously some 3 entrepreneurs, his experience has been good. But that's only an accidental thing.
It's a huge effort.
Yeah. But see, for instance, Bangalore urban DC, where the land values have gone 530 times, which is not 530%, 53,000% land value has gone up. You won't find a single honest officer being posted as DC of urban DC Bangalore. 3 people have been arrested. 1 has committed suicide also. All these things are there. So it all depends upon the continuity which is not there in the government. The third thing you mentioned about the UK system and all that, that's a different kind of a system. You see, unless you have the economic development for the majority of the people, you cannot really bring about improvements only by the bureaucracy itself, which is where, though it is a taboo in a place like this to quote Lenin, he said this, unless there is political liberty, without economic liberty is meaningless. These are his exact words. If you don't have economic liberty, votes will be purchased, all these kind of things will go on, politicians will be corrupt, bureaucracy will be corrupt, and all that. This thing will go on. And there's no limit to it. There is one gentleman, Vikaram, sorry, only 1 minute I'll take. This, some of the affidavits to be filed before the ADR, your Action for Democratic Reforms, Trilochan Shastri brings out all these things. The two ministers who are in the present ministry, they present party in power, not ministry yet. There is ministry. 1,600 crores is the affidavit given. And there is one gentleman who was nominated for Legislative Council some time back, but he did not succeed. He had declared 1,742 crores affidavit. MLC election time, you had to give that affidavit. And he was only a scrap dealer in KGF. And I had outlawed him to come into my office when I was that encroachment task force and all that. Now he is he has declared income is 1,742 crores. Now it's unimaginable. How do you say, what is 1,742 crores? It is better to visualize. This Vidhan Saudha is 5,500,000 square feet. 500,500. It's very easy to remember. 500,000 square feet. 500,500 square feet. Now the guidance value there is 32,000 rupees per square foot. So if you multiply 32,000 rupees per square foot with 5 lakh square feet, you get 1,600 crores. So these are people who own one Vidhan. There are two ministers who are owning Vidhan Saudhas. And that is declared in, affidavit income. People don't declare all their true income. 25% at the most they may declare. 75% is not declared. So this is the magnitude of corruption that you have got in politics. It's big time. And your electoral bonds are only to ensure that this kind of corruption goes on. And Supreme Court is not willing to declare, to decide on that. Anyway.
Thank you.